The season is just over a week away, but we've still got to talk about some recruiting because Florida is still active on the recruiting trail. We're going to talk about it on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Thursday. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. Like, subscribe, comment, review, share. September 1st at 7 p.m., September 2nd at 5:30 p.m., The Social at Midtown in Gainesville. I will be there. Few other folk will be there. I'll say that. But you should be there too. It's free to show up. It's free to hang out. Just obviously pay for your food, drinks, have some fun. And once that red light goes off, we're going to have a lot of it. But right now, I'm about to be joined by John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting and Locked On's Recruiting Insider. Joining me now for Locked On Gators is John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting and Locked On's Recruiting Insider. And before we talk about recruiting, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. And John, it seems like this is an evergreen conversation here for the Florida Gators at linebackers. We're in on everybody, but we're not getting anybody. But Kaveion Keys is the latest player that we're talking about. He's committing this Saturday. What's your analysis of his talent, play, and his recruitment so far?
Yeah, Kaveion's super interesting. A kid, 12 months ago had 0 scholarship offers out of the state of Virginia. Two-way guy. He's a receiver, returner, linebacker, pass rusher. He does a little bit of everything. And you talk about a blow-up. He just initially, once he got on the field, I think Virginia offered, like, after his first couple of games, the in-state school, and then like a dozen more schools jumped in, and he was a star really on both sides of the ball, to the point where they won a state title because of a fade route that he caught over a defensive back and scored a touchdown. So yeah, his last 12 months have been incredible, from a 0 offer prospect to a legitimate Power 5 recruit. So really fascinating recruitment. You really love to see those. Those are easy stories to kind of get behind and root for. So yeah, so he's, instead of riding that momentum all the way to signing day, he's like, look, let me take advantage, because 12 months ago I had nothing. So now he's going to come off the board Saturday, like you said, and it's going to be interesting. Virginia's in there, of course, even though they changed coaching staffs. I think that hurt them just a little bit. North Carolina's probably the favorite. Jay Bateman was part of that recruitment early on for the Tar Heels, obviously now at Florida, trying to pull Kaveion down to the Sunshine State. But I think regionally, North Carolina makes a lot of sense. But Florida was kind of late to this race. They, I think, are the last big scholarship offer he picked up, certainly the last SEC scholarship offer that he added back in the spring evaluation period. And I think there was some back and forth on trying to get him down for an official. I don't see it on record, so I don't think the official ever happened. I know Penn State got him on campus, and they were feeling very good earlier in the summer months, but as that summer progressed, he went back to Carolina, took that official, and then he was kind of shutting it down at that point. I think in that regard, it was kind of Carolina's race to lose. If you're a Gator fan, you're wondering if he was going to extend his recruitment and maybe take trips beyond the commitment, or keep the door open a little bit towards signing day. I think that's maybe your best bet in that regard, because I don't think he's been down to the swamp, at least intimately, at this point of his recruitment. So it's really hard to land a prospect out of region like that at any position. So I think that's kind of the uphill battle. But he only took 2 officials, so he does have the door open if he wants to take more trips in that regard. Then you hope to grab an official visit, maybe pair it with one of the big games, that's coming to the swamp here in the next little bit, So I think that would be the best bet for the Gators. But it looks like it was a little bit too late to join the race without getting a visit to win the recruitment. But look, Florida has a nice start to the season, and beats Utah and there's some momentum there, you just never know who you can get on campus. So interesting if they continue to recruit him beyond Saturday's verbal commitment, assuming he picks another school.
Yeah, we'll see if he commits elsewhere and then takes a visit to Florida. We'll see if his current coach is going to go cry and throw a little fit about it. But now here's the thing with 2023, at least. Florida has struggled recruiting two positions. One of them is offensive line. The other is a linebacker. And yes, 2024 is off to a hot start with Miles Graham there, and they flipped Jaden Robinson for 2023 from South Carolina.
Right.
But what kind of has been the route, in your opinion, as to Florida not really being able to seal the deal with these 2023 linebackers?
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I think there's always some circumstantial stuff there. Obviously, again, we just talked about how Virginia was hurt by a coaching change. I think a coaching change is always tough in some regards to bounce back from. I think Jay Bateman being an out of region guy doesn't help with the initial returns and trying to build. And we all know this entire Florida class with 23, it was really a slow starter on purpose, right? Billy Napier and company, they got in and they really wanted to focus on 2022, December, January, even into February, as to where most coaching staffs had already turned the page towards 2023. Florida was very meticulous in that transition, and I think that hurt a lot of positions early on. Like you said, you did flip Jaden Robinson from South Carolina, but there are some in-state linebackers that circumstantially you just kind of fell out of it for, right? Like Ruben Bain has always been looking at Miami more so as a pass rusher, and then some out-of-state schools got involved. I think like Javon Brown. I actually think if he stays in state, Florida's probably in the best shape, the St. Thomas Aquinas linebacker. But the last time I saw him, he's like, yeah, I'm leaving the state of Florida for college. So sometimes it's circumstantial to a degree. Obviously, Pup Howard, picked South Carolina over Florida. I thought that was a big kind of more conventional loss head-to-head on the trail in that regard. So I think part of it is the in-state. Obviously Malik Bryant, if you consider him an off-ball linebacker, that one was a really big miss head-to-head with Miami. So it's like Florida's right there for all of these guys finishing first or second in these races, but obviously it's a results business. So I do think there's a combination of circumstance, and there's not a lot of depth, not a lot of talent in the state of Florida, which is weird. At that linebacker position, there hasn't been this group of 5, 6, 7 guys that you're like, okay, all these guys are going to play for, Florida, Miami, or Florida State. So I think that's kind of part of it as well. It's one of the weaker positions in the state of Florida in this cycle, which is not something we're really used to seeing. Usually it's everything but quarterback or maybe offensive tackle is loaded in the state of Florida. Not the case at linebacker in the 2023 cycle. So sometimes that's a part of it there as well. But I do think, again, you've got one on the board. There are some targets here going forward. Again, you recruit guys who are committed elsewhere. You've already made one flip. Is that kind of just your bag for this 2023 class? Or do you expand the board and allow some of these kids to rise during their senior seasons, right? A lot of these kids haven't even begun playing games for their senior year. I know down in Florida they have, in some other states, but largely these seasons are about to get going across the country. And I think linebacker is one of those positions where you can kind of allow play to dictate positioning when it comes to recruiting. And if a kid, particularly in state, plays his way, up the charts, then I think you've got a better chance to keep him within state lines. But it's not something I would worry about to a large degree. This is going to be a great class, maybe a top 10 class when it's all said and done, but it's certainly still something you keep an eye on until there's major change one way or the other.
And then we're about to talk about another defender that the Florida Gators are targeting. But first, a quick word from LinkedIn. As the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier for you to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people that you want to interview faster and for free. If you've never used LinkedIn Jobs before, I highly recommend it. That's how I got my last job before Locked On, which I do like. I like that one, but I like this one a lot more. With simple tools like screening questions, it makes it easy for you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and potentially hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Locked On College to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Joining me again for Locked On Gators is John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting, Locked On's Recruiting Insider, and we're still talking Gators defensive targets. This one feels a little safer for the Florida Gators. And safety, Bryce Thornton, who is he as a player?
Oh, just a super versatile athlete. You know, his father played ball in college football, of course. His older brother's a basketball player up at Ohio State. I mean, just an interesting family. And Bryce has a lot of those qualities in his own game. You know, he played offense, running back, receiver, kind of was a gadget player for Milton, which is one of the better high schools in the Atlanta area. But defensively, just all of it comes together with him as a safety. The IQ, the instincts, the athleticism, the ball skills. There's just an awareness to this kid's game. Not the most physically intimidating, he's not Cam Chancellor or one of these safety types from a physical perspective, but man, he is great in the margins. And I think you always need that, in a pass first nature of today's game. And he could be a nickel, he could be a safety, he could be a guy who plays deep or near the box. Again, the instincts are off the charts here. And he's never really been able to focus on one position, and we already see that on tape. So actually focusing on the safety spot or the nickel spot or whatever it is next year when he gets to college, I think that just increases kind of the potential for a kid like that's game. So yeah, he's one that every time you watch him, you just kind of like him a little bit more. So I expect his recruitment it's already hotly contested, but I expect it to be a nice little battle here over the next few months.
Yeah, and I mean, just talking about his recruitment, it feels like late. I mean, there's no official commitment date set, but
Right.
it feels like literally just based on what I'm seeing on social media, that it's kind of a two-horse race right now with Florida and Alabama. Is that accurate? Is there someone that we should be looking out for? I know he's a Georgia kid. Is that something to be concerned about?
Yeah, I mean he's Atlanta kid, like we said, major powerhouse type program at Milton. So yeah, you wonder if the Bulldogs get involved, especially since they missed on a couple safety targets, even in their own state. So you wonder if down the line, again, as these senior seasons begin and get rolling, and you kind of reevaluate if the priorities start to shift. But it's not like Alabama's a slouch in that regard, of course, either. So, that will be interesting to track. I know he's going to take visits during the fall. He's going to take in games at certainly in Tuscaloosa, certainly in Gainesville. But really, even though he's a Georgia kid and you would kind of perceive that as a classic, I guess, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban kind of battle, he's really liked Florida for a long time. He's taken a bunch of trips to Gainesville, I think 3 already this year. And he's already got another one penciled in. I mean, that says a ton about a kid's interest. And people sleep on that distance. The Atlanta to Gainesville, right on 75. It's not the furthest trip in the world. You're talking on a good day, obviously traffic wise, you never know, but you're talking 5-6 hours worst case scenario. So it's really not this, he's going all the way down to Florida. It's really not that type of scenario. So I do think the Gators stay heavily involved and maybe profile as the favorite for this prospect. And they're all of a sudden, like we talked about off air, Brandon, building this massive defensive back class. There's corners, there's safeties, there's hybrids. There's a lot of things involved in this DB group. And it's kind of what you would expect, right? You're overhauling an entire roster and you need to get your guys. And when you've got, some of these big name coaches, Billy Napier, obviously Corey Raymond involved, it's going to be very specific and very successful more times than not. So yeah, I think a head-to-head win optically over Saban would certainly, bode well for Florida in this race. But like you said, it appears as if there's probably some time between now and a final call, but no matter when Bryce makes it, I do think that Gator hat will be, really close to his reach, when that ceremony begins, because it looks like they'll be, top 2 or not even top 2, top 1, when all is said and done in this one. So yeah, definitely a prospect Gators fans need to focus on consistently.
Okay, so I will be fully prepared for him to do the whole pick the Gator hat up, put it down thing. That's what everyone loves doing at this point. With Bryce Thornton specifically, you mentioned, versatile player, not the most physically imposing, like you said. He plays for a powerhouse program. What are the odds that we see him kind of make a rise in the rankings throughout this fall? And I'm going to be completely honest. I'm asking this because, of course, it's Blue Chip Billy He's not a blue chip yet, but we got to watch that blue chip ratio. So one thing
Yeah.
Bryce Thornton sees a climb.
Look, I mean, he's at like you said, he's at a very visible program. Milton's going to be on in the local Atlanta TV market. I haven't looked, but they probably got an ESPN game somewhere this year. I mean, he's going to have eyeballs on him during this season. And again, the more you watch him, the more you like him. He's not your classic easy rising prospect where he's like 6'4", running 4.4. He's a great basketball player. It also depends on who's making the rankings, right? You know, depending on what you value as an outlet and as a group. You know, I don't know if Bryce fits all of those boxes, but if it's about football and getting better and projection, which is literally the base of what we're supposed to be doing, yeah, there should be a lot of room for him to improve. Again, the instincts, the ball skills are already there, and he's not been able to focus on that position. So as he expands that as a senior, I think he'll have more examples and consistency around his playmaking ability, as opposed to being known as a gadget guy who can do a little bit of everything. Maybe he can be more explosive and specifically good as a safety, and that will help others, you know, catch up to what the tape shows us.
And then we're about to talk about the scheduled Utah visits right now. Maybe there's going to be more, maybe less, who knows. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. To wrap up today's show, still joining me is John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting, Locked On's Recruiting Insider. And we're talking about these Utah visits because the game is, I mean, at the time this release is 9 days away. So we're getting real close to that time.
Amen. Amen. And don't, hey, I didn't try to wear Utah colors on this pod. I was, you know, it was an early morning. We are just trying to get going here. So don't come to my DMs there, Gator Nation.
I'm not coming to DMs. I'll be in Florida next week, so you're getting hands. I'm gonna let
Amen.
you know that right
Amen. Love it. I'm ready.
So Florida's got 4 2023 visits currently set up for that Utah game. Cormani McClain and Dijon Johnson. We'll start with them. Could we see that Utah game kind of seal the deal for either of them? They get to be near this program on a game day. You get to be in the swamp for a Power 5 game, first game under Billy Napier. Just could that atmosphere kind of make him go, I could see myself playing here for a few years?
It certainly won't hurt, Brandon. There's really no doubt about that. I think for Cormani, you know, he's just unique. You know, he handles things his own way. I don't know if he will ever tweet out a commitment date or his plan or any of that kind of stuff. And even when you talk to him, which we've done, gosh, over the last 2 years, he's never really going to fully lay it out for you. Cormani is a wild card. It's just going to pop one day, and that's going to be it. However he chooses to release it. So I don't know if one singular thing is going to put him over the top. I do know a lot of schools want him to visit for games this fall. And it's still this is the number 2 player in America. So this is a very, very highly contested battle. So I would be somewhat surprised if this visit, at least from a timeline perspective, ends the process. Now, privately, could something like this put Florida over the top and he just doesn't say anything for 4 months? Possibly. But publicly and tangibly, it's going to be hard to identify this game and this visit as something that puts Florida over the top. I guess for good is what I'm trying to say. Because we know he's going to be in Tuscaloosa. He might pop up in Athens. He might pop up in Coral Gables or Miami Gardens, technically, in that regard. So I'm not sure if one visit will do that for him. But look, starting the visit slate, wherever you start it, is a big deal because now you're creating those in-season impressions. And there should be a ton of excitement. Like you mentioned, there's not a whole lot of P5 versus P5 battles on your home turf to start a season, right? So you got to take advantage of what should be a great atmosphere. Utah's a darn good team, as everybody knows, or everybody will know here soon again. It seems like they're underrated every year. So it should be electric in the swamp. There's really no doubt about it. And recruiting should always mimic what perception tells us relative to a game day itself, so Oregon, Georgia should be pretty wild. Notre Dame, Ohio State should be a great atmosphere, all that kind of stuff. So I do think Florida, Utah is one of those biggest games of the entire weekend. So I do think it should correlate towards recruiting. But I don't know if we'll feel it as much with Cormani relative to some others. So with Dijon, I do think it's a little bit more tangible, right? Decommitted from Ohio State late in the summer and some very clear contenders in the race, right? Florida had him on campus right before that decommitment. Miami was supposed to get him on campus before the decommitment. The trip didn't happen, but Miami did send an official offer. Alabama sent an official offer. So again, we're talking about the same teams for these DB prospects, for the most part. So it's going to be interesting to see how those dominoes fall. But I do think DD is a little bit closer towards wrapping the process up. I think his list of contenders is smaller, and his I guess desired experiences are a little bit more narrow as well. And again, we've talked about his probable desire to stay a little bit closer to home. So again, I think Alabama being in it is interesting, but I'm not sure how much movement there could be there. I think Miami would be maybe the dark horse to keep an eye on if he continued to take visits and he actually got down to Coral Gables and all that. But look, there's really no doubt that even before the Ohio State decommitment went down, Florida was trending. I mean, we were there at FNL. We saw the attention. You felt it, right? So I think that's still the case for Florida, even without this upcoming trip. So a return visit, which means 2 visits in a row now to UF over any other school. I mean, that starts to tell its own story. And I think that the ball is certainly in Florida's court with regards to Johnson's recruitment as it stands right now. The only worry point from the Gator perspective for me would be if you start to extend it and now he takes other visits and he's taking officials and he's considering a decision closer to signing day. Then you say, okay, well, maybe we're going to, lose some of that big lead that we've built. But if it's sooner rather than later, I think you got to feel really good about your chances. And look, Corey Raymond's on this one personally. It's just hard to imagine him missing on all these top targets. He's already landed several, but with these two, McClain and Johnson, I mean, you got to feel good if you split and you grab one of them. They're both big corners, different corners, but both big corners, very confident, ball skill oriented corners. So it feels like you got to grab one of them to wrap up the cornerback class. And then you could focus on Bryce Thornton and some of these safety prospects that are still on the board going forward.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you mentioned, Corey Raymond out here recruiting everybody, and
Yeah.
Alabama sending in an offer. And there's an offer that Alabama sent that sent some Florida fans into a little bit of a tizzy with cornerback commit Sharif Denson. I know that we've said it before. You're like, look, you're a flip candidate until you're not. Until you sign that LOI, you're not a flip candidate. But is there cause for concern about Sharif Denson getting that Alabama offer, seeming excited about it, taking a visit? Should Florida Gators fans be concerned about that?
I think mildly, sure. I mean, but again, you look at it from his perspective. If if Bama comes through with the official offer and pushes and like, hey, come up to campus, no matter what's going on, that's something you at least consider, right? I mean, it just kind of is what it is. It's if you're working for a local company and Google calls, like you're probably going to listen at least. So I think in that regard, it's just normal human due diligence. It's nothing too crazy to read into. This Florida class is loaded at that position. And look, Denson today might be, the best DB they've got in the fold right now. So I do think that he knows that. And look, he's really comfortable and connected to this Gator program, right? He was another guy who was, VIP treatment at FNL, showing other guys around, really calm and kind of casual with it. He'll be back, I'm sure, for the Utah game and other games. So, you feel good about that standing. He's an in-state kid. The Jacksonville kind of effort initiative, whatever you want to call it, that Florida's been under. He's a very big part of that. So you feel good in all those regards. And obviously Corey Raymond on the surface level, you feel good head to head with just about anybody, especially for a corner. I think with safeties and versatile guys, nickel types, okay, maybe. But when it comes to corner, you got to feel good about any battle that you decide to jump into. Much less one that you've already won, much less one that's in state at that position. So I think you worry mildly, but just on that surface level, that is, like you said, the same with all the guys who are unsigned, which is all of them at this point. You're a candidate until you're not. So I think it's just classic recruiting there. Look, Bama's DB class is filling up too. There's not a whole lot of space there as well. So we're talking McClain, Dijon, Sharif. All these guys can't end up there as well. So I think numbers wise, you got to feel good about holding on to Denson as well. Because we know, again, McClain is where all this conversation begins. And we also know there's no true timetable for when something's going to drop. The last he told our crew who went up to go see him at practice was, I'm going to announce something about an announcement in September. So it's like nothing. There's nothing there tangibly. So maybe in September he says, hey, I'm going to commit on signing day, which is like, okay, cool. We've been saying that for 2 years. So it's really hard to imagine those other dominoes falling first for some of these other programs with McClain still out there.
Yeah, I mean, DB's obviously the focus here for the Florida Gators. Cormani, Dijon, Sharif Denson. Dijon maybe would have been committed if a few people didn't jump the gun consistently with him. I'm not going to let them know. You suck for that. I'm just going to let them know that. I want them to know that.
Everyone has a role in this, for sure.
Yeah. That was it for John Garcia. Thank you so much, John, for coming on. And I mean, you're gonna see him on Miami, but you don't have to worry about Locked On Canes. That's not something we concern ourselves with now. It's football season. This is John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting and Locked On's Recruiting Insider.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow as I'll be joined by Hayden Hansen, Florida Gators freshman tight end. And we're going to talk about this football team. Now make your second listen Locked On SEC, hosted by Chris Gordy of Sports 790. Get the best coverage in the best conference, including the best university, the University of Florida. And I was on yesterday's episode, so be sure to check that out for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports and GiantsCountryFSI.com, and I'll see you all tomorrow.